Welcome to Mixing for Beginners. I'm Matt. In this video, I want to talk about unmasking vocals. So recently I've been having some difficulty in one of the mixes that I'm doing. It's for a song of mine called I Was Part of the Cover-Up. And the vocals in the chorus are kind of problematic because there are these two keyboards that happen. One of them's very sharp and the other one's more stringy. And the stringy one's sort of sidechained to the bass, so it's got this like thump to it. But the stabby ones, the stabby keyboards, every time they hit, it just sort of buries the vocals. And, you know, there's a number of things you can try to do, but what I ended up doing was using an Izotope Neutron plugin. Izotope makes great plugins. I use them all over my mixes. But the Izotope Neutron in its unmasking feature. And it worked really great, and it was pretty easy to do, so I figured I would show you what that looks like. So preface, though. If an instrument is in the mix, then we need to be able to hear it, or it's just clutter. So one of the things I always try to do is changing my arrangement. Like if I can't hear the vocals, or I can't hear certain instruments that are competing, I ask myself, does this need to be here? In this case, I really liked both of those keyboards, so I'm like, yes, they both have to be here. We're just gonna have to make this work. But arrangement is always the first thing that I try. I've talked about this before, I think, in sort of decluttering bass and kick in another one of my videos. But one of the things you can always try to do is make sure that the kick and the bass are not happening at the same time. That's the arrangement solution. And if you do that, then they're not going to compete with each other, and you're going to be able to hear both clearly. So arrangement. Well, I wanted to keep the two keyboards, and of course the vocals need to be in the arrangement, so that was not something I was going to do. Another thing you can do to try to get instruments to stick out is EQ them differently as well. But when it's a keyboard or certain keyboards and vocals, you know, unless the keys are really, really high or really, really low, there's going to be some overlap in frequencies there. So I did as much as I could do to make them sound good. I always EQ the vocals anyway, but still there's overlap there. You can try to put them in different spatial locations, so pan left or right. Keyboard's a little bit hard because it's a stereo instrument, and a lot of times I will sort of spread them a little bit left or spread them a little bit right, even though they're stereo. But in this case, I didn't. You'll hear it, but the keyboards sort of create this bed in this section, so I wasn't going to do that here. And then the other thing you can try to do is time-based effects, so reverb to set things backwards, that type of stuff. But there's reverb on here. It's not going to make it decluttered. So anyway, those are the things you can try. And this is relevant for vocals a lot of times because vocals will overlap with keyboards, of course, with guitar, with some percussion instruments. So when it comes to vocals, you're going to have to try to unmask probably, unless you have a lot of space in your mix and there's not a lot going on at the same time. You know, if it's just kit, bass, vocals, you probably, you don't have to do much. But if there's keys or guitar or something, you're going to have to try some things to make those pop out. So after you've tried all those things that I mentioned, then definitely unmasking is a good option. So what is unmasking happen? It's sort of like, or what is happening in unmasking? It's sort of like it's a cross between this. It's like multi-chain compression. So it means identifying certain frequencies and compressing them down with a side chain, so triggered off of another instrument. And in this case, what we're doing is on the keyboards, I'm applying basically a multi-band compressor in the form of this neutron that is being triggered off of the vocal bus. So I will show you, let's see, I will show you how I set this up. So first of all, here are my vocals up here. So here's like my vocal group. It's a group in Ableton, but here's my vocal group. And here are the two competing keyboards. So let me play you this section first. And I think I've turned all the neutrons off, so it should sound like the original situation. Okay, so here it is.
You set me up when I became your delegate. I didn't know it at the time. Come to find out, I was part of the cover-up. You left me to hang when I became your delegate. I didn't know
All right, so those are the keyboard and the vocals. You can hear the vocals, but it's just every time a stab happens with that higher with the more the more harsh keyboard, it buries it a bit. You lose some of the clarity in the words that I'm saying. And the other thing that's happening too is there's a harmony at the same time, so it's going to add a little bit of clutter. And this is just the first chorus. They get more complicated with more shit going on as you kind of go down here. So it only gets more and more buried. So what did we do? Okay, so the keyboards are here. It's this eruption and this Tron. And what I ended up doing is I just grabbed the Neutron. So if you go, it's a third-party plugin, Izotope, down here. On the left-hand side, you can see the Neutron 4. I grabbed that and I just brought it right down here onto Eruption. So let's look at that first. I'm gonna solo the vocals and I'm gonna solo Eruption. And then here we are. So this is, actually I'm gonna turn this off. So like.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
All right, so here is the Neutron. And so first of all, what you need to do is, and it's different in different DAWs. So like in Ableton, the side chain is down here, so I would just click the drop down, hit Vox because that's my vocal bus, and I want all the vocals to trigger this. Like I want to make sure that all my vocals are clear. That's why I'm using the entire bus. Oh, and the other thing is you can put the Neutron on a bus too. So I could choose, I did this originally to put it on the keys bus or group here. And it did a pretty good job, but I ended up splitting it up and putting it on each one of the tracks individually because I thought it did a little bit better job. It's just a little bit more detailed in what it was trying to suppress. So in here, Neutron's, the Izotope's pretty great because it gives you like this dashboard where you can add a bunch of different effects to it. It comes like when you put it on in the first place, it'll come with this EQ on, but I turned the EQ off. Don't need to do that. I've already EQ'd this track. But then by hitting the little plus button here, you can choose what effect you want to apply. So I just chose Unmask and it's right here. And now, okay, so what's going to happen if I turn this on is once I play it, you're going to see gray, you're going to see purple in the display, and then you're going to see some orange as well. The gray, here, I'll just show it to you first.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
So the gray is the frequency spectrum of this track, so this keyboard. The purple is the sidechain track, so that's what's feeding in here. So the purple is the frequency spectrum of the vocal bus, and where it overlaps, you'll see them overlap. Where that overlaps is where there's competition in this frequency range, and then the orange is where the frequency range is being squashed by the compressor in this Unmask. So take a look at it again.
You set me up when I became your delegate. I didn't know it at the time, come to find out.
So you have just a few controls here. Like I think the display is really awesome because you can very easily see where the competition is. But then it's very simple to like hone this in. First of all, sensitivity is obviously how, like at what point will the Unmask start to be applied? And so 100% sensitivity would be 100%, as soon as there is any overlap whatsoever, it'll start to apply. That's way too much and way too harsh. Like here, I'll show you the difference in a second. So I brought the sensitivity to, I think 50% is kind of what I've seen in other tutorials that people use, just sort of like halfway. But I also thought that was way too sensitive, and the effect that it was having was just squashing it too much. The attack is how fast it starts to compress once it sees the overlap happen, and release is how long it takes to shut off once the overlap is not happening anymore. For my purposes, for this song, I liked a pretty fast attack. I wanted it to come on pretty quickly, but I also wanted it to sort of have a long tail and release, so it wasn't a very abrupt change. Because what will happen is, especially if you apply a lot to it, it will, as soon as the voice stopped, it would be really loud again, and that would be too much of a surprise. You can kind of hear it already because the first keyboard stab happens before the vocals come in, and it is louder. Like you can hear it is louder than when my vocals come in. The next stab is a lot quieter. So if you're really concentrating on the keyboard, you can hear that disparity. But in the context of the mix, I didn't think it was too much. So that's attack, release, and sensitivity. And then 10%, determines the amount of, well, here it is, determines the amount of processing applied. So if if you want it applied very strongly, you would put it at 100%. I started it at like 30%, and then I backed it all the way down to 10%. And so I think you can hear the difference. Like if you're listening to my vocals and this keyboard, you can hear that my vocals are popping out more. You can hear the dip in the volume of these frequencies in the keyboard. So just listen again.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
You can hear it dip a little bit. But now let me just apply this a lot, and I think you'll be able to hear a bigger difference.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
Here it's like it totally shuts it off. Like you could just barely hear like a little bit of part of it as my vocals sort of tail off. But that's what 100% does. Completely squashes it.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
And that's way too much. Like we're not trying to make the thing disappear. Otherwise, I would just cut it out of the mix right there. So let's try something like 50%. I think that's going to be still too harsh because I chose 10, but here it is.
You set me up when I became your
way too harsh. You hear it like start to like swell in. So let's try 20%. Here.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
Still swells in like as I trail off. You set me up, and then there's like a little dip in my voice right there, and it swells in, and that was too much too. I'm not looking for like a pulsing sound there. So let's go back down to 10. And this is what I put it at before, so this is what I think works.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
Yeah, that's way better. It just ducks those frequencies, those treble frequencies, out of the way, so you could still hear the vocals pop through, but without making like this like thumping sort of swelling side chain, like like we're doing house music sound. The other thing is right here, this determines the frequency range that it's going to trigger. So if you only wanted to trigger like a little bit of frequency range, you can just move these sliders right here like this. But I think this is pretty good.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
All right, so let's check the other keyboard too, this Tron guy. So I'm going to solo it and add the Neutron, and here we'll bring it up right here. Okay. Same thing pretty much applied. I thought it was 10% worked with 30% sensitivity, but here it is. Now, the one thing I would say is I do have a side chain on this keyboard already to a kick drum on quarter notes because I did want a pulse for this like stringy keyboard, but I also wanted the unmask to happen. So let's just hear it. Let's hear it with, I guess, without first. Here we go.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
You can hear the side chain.
I didn't know it at the time.
But let's apply the unmask and let's see what happens now.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
It's a pretty light change here.
At the time, come to find out I was part of.
It's a pretty light change. Like it's not hitting as hard because I think the other keyboard's just more it's more sensitive and because of like the timbre of the sound, but it is making a little bit of a difference there. Let's see what like a bunch of let's turn this whole thing up and see what it sounds like.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
Really squashes it. Let's try 50.
You set me up when I became your delegate.
50's not bad actually, or not as bad as it was on the other keyboard. Let's go down to 30 and see what happens.
You set me up when I became your delegate. I didn't know it.
I think that's actually pretty good. Let me add this other keyboard back in.
You set me up when I became your delegate. I
think that's gonna do it. Let's do the whole mix and just hear what this sounds like.
You set me up when I became your delegate. I didn't know it.
Yeah.
come to find.
Yeah, I think that does a pretty good job. So anyway, so that's a very pretty simple and easy way to get your vocals to pop out of the mix when they're competing with other instruments using this Izotope Neutron. I really like their plugins because there's a lot of automated stuff that it'll do for you if you need to do things really quick. And all of the plugins talk to each other. So you can, there's actually a few different ways you can do some unmasking and multiband EQing as long as Izotope plugins are on the tracks that you're trying to unmask from each other. Oh yeah, the one caveat is, so the Izotope plugins on their own can be expensive. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, of course, but they do have a subscription, which is like a monthly. It's a pretty competitive payment. I can't remember offhand exactly what it is, but you get a lot of plugins, and particularly if you're looking for a suite of plugins, to give you something different than what has come with your DAW, you can do a lot worse than the subscription to Izotope. They offer a lot of really good sounding plugins that also are very intuitive and a lot of automated stuff. So anyway, I think that's it. Hopefully this helped. See you later. Bye.
Risks agent.